Thank you so much for taking the time. It's only the second dentist that we've had on, aside from Jack and his long history prior to that. So this is a topic that I think that you are uniquely qualified to talk on and have a different perspective, being more into the quantum biology, quantum physics side of trying to learn and apply this in treating patients. So if you don't care, introduce yourself and we're going to dive in and talk probably a different dental conversation than anybody's expecting.
Maybe. Doug Sanquist here. I'm a dentist in Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm a second generation dentist. My dad was a dentist, so he practiced for 50 years, and I practiced with him for 20 of those 50 years. So we actually practiced together. An interesting sidelight to the quantum biology story is my mom just moved out of my father passed away in 2022, and my mother just moved out of the house that they built. They lived together, and so my sister was going through his library, and she pulled out a book by Dr. John Ott, which was Health and Light. And my dad had a signed copy of his book, like from the 1980s. And my dad had actually gone to a lecture back in the 80s. And there was actually some patients that my dad would make clear dentures because the pink in the acrylic would actually zap their energy. So there's a few patients that are still walking around with clear acrylic in their dentures. That's basically from John Ott's work back in the 1980s. So kind of comes full circle in the whole thing.
How cool.
It's pretty cool. Yeah. And the fact that you can't even get the book today. I mean, it's like, what is it like? I don't know what it is on Amazon, a couple $100 or something like that. If you can find a
Yeah, no,
copy. I
I've
mean,
got it right. It's right up there.
there's
Jack,
PDFs of it, I think, floating
yeah.
around. Everybody should read it. So I guess the other question is like, how did I get stuck into like the world of quantum biology? And I think it's an interesting, it's a little bit of an interesting story. Um, I and the world of dentistry is dentistry is I view dentistry as it's part of healthcare. But we're kind of viewed as like the barbers and back in the 1910s. I mean, they kind of viewed dentist as wooden teeth, and you basically, if you don't have teeth, you don't die, so nobody cares. Um, so we're kind of like the cast off. We're kind of outside of healthcare, but we're kind of part of healthcare. So I mean, the mouth is kind of important, but people don't view it that way. As far as insurance companies, and it's like everybody loves to hate the dentist until you need the dentist, and then once you need us, then you can't get in fast enough for us, right? So there's one thing that is the whole world of sleep apnea is a fairly huge problem in modern society. So the dentist started looking at kids. We started looking at the size of the jaws of the kids, right? And so if you listen to Dr. Jack will talk about the Anubians and the Egyptians that the pharaohs that built the pyramids, and then the Anubians who actually built them lived outside. And Peter Unger's work shows that they actually the guys that built the pyramids lived outside and had full jaws with all of their teeth. And the pharaohs had small skulls, small mouths with crowded teeth. So in today's world, where most of the kids that are born, and most 30, 40-year-olds have small upper jaws. We have the jaws, wisdom teeth are mostly coming out because there's not room for them. So most people don't have a large enough skull to actually fit all their teeth. Well, what sits right below, what sits right above the upper jaw is the nose. So if you have a small upper jaw, then you have a small airway. So you can't breathe through your nose. So lots of dentists are looking at like kids and saying, can we expand upper jaws? Can we improve the anatomy to actually make air easier to breathe? Can we actually help solve the sleep apnea problem? No, dentists can't treat sleep apnea. We can't diagnose sleep apnea, but we can affect the airway, right? We can affect the anatomy of the airway. And so, lots of dentists are saying, can we just make things bigger? Which actually makes a little bit of sense. I mean, if it's really, really narrow, you can't breathe through your nose, you're a mouth breather. So we've developed ways to actually expand jaws. Orthodontics can do all this stuff. We can do myofunctional therapy on the tongue. So we can actually help to make the skeleton bigger. The problem is that in adults, um, I saw a few patients who we actually expanded, and we didn't end up with the side effect or the benefit of a better airway or better sleep or improved sleep. So then that led me, I had one patient who actually needed to be, she had a really small jaw. She needed to be expanded. We expanded her. She actually said she could breathe through her nose really, really well. She did really, really well for like a year, was sleeping well, everything was fine. Then she started to eat more. She said, "Well, I was doing well until I gained weight." And then I started thinking, well, maybe we just expanded the airway and then the soft tissue just comes and fills in. Now we just have more skin that we just, if you expand it this way, but you fill in with soft tissue, then we didn't do anything. So then that actually led me to Sean O'Mara's work. So you've heard of Sean O'Mara, the guy up in the visceral fat guy. So I actually DM'd him because I wanted to figure out if there was a way that we could actually measure like visceral fat in the oral pharynx and the tongue um, easily without an MRI. I don't think we can. You'd almost need an MRI to do that. It's probably worth something looking into. But in that group, I got into a group with Sean and a couple other people as the only dentist there. I was kind of out like a fish out of water with a bunch of radiologists, and ENTs and whatever. And in that group was Max Gullhane from Australia. And so Max was in that group, and Max posts one Christmas, he posts his interview with Tom Seeger, which was on the cold plunge, right? And so then I watched his video with the cold, and I was just amazed at like Tom's story and about when he talked about Dean Hall and about the mitochondria and how the mitochondria what is it, mitogenesis or whatever they call the mitochondria, whatever that is. Um, and then he starts talking about Jack Kruse, and I really hadn't heard of Jack Kruse at all. And then I found Max's 3-hour podcast on Light with Max, and then I mean my world was like completely like turned over because you come at this from the view of like DNA, and you come at this with you don't even think. I mean, I was still in the mode that like UV light was probably causing cancer and people were getting melanoma, and people were, if you went outside for too long, you were going to like drop dead immediately, like, whatever. So that was a big eye opener for me. And then, so I listened to the Max's podcast with Jack probably 4 or 5 times. And I still go back and listen to it once in a while because to me, it's one of the seminal podcasts that I think Jack has done. As far as I think it's better than Huram podcast in my opinion. I think that's the start. Then, so then the question is, I mean, at this point, I'm pretty much doing this for myself and for my friends and family because I'm still a centralized dentist. I mean, I'm your basic restorative dentist in Las Vegas, Nevada. I have lots of patients who come in. They just come in from the dermatologist's office and they just had, all these things burned off. And if I'm here to solve their problem and I just start telling them about about their skin cancer, I mean, it's not really gonna. I mean, I think you can have the discussion with them, but I think it's a pretty heavy lift to kind of make the jump from where most people are to understanding quantum biology. So I think that's I haven't figured it out yet. I'm happy to talk about it with people, but I'm not gonna immediately just tell them everything they're doing is wrong like right off the bat, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, no, I hear you.
I mean,
Max and Tom, they both become good friends. Great guys. Tom was just gone on again for another round after he did that interview with Richard Fry and talking autism and cold
yeah.
and mitochondria. It was a good one. But Jack, where have you gone with that? Because you had a podcast with him that was
Mhm.
one of my favorites. Is not one that he goes down that rabbit trail of his history as a dentist, oral surgeon,
Right,
prior to
right.
being a neurosurgeon, and so he lays all that out in his typical way. But if you go from Max's first one on Light, and then Alexis's, I think it's number 24, and then yours, that lays out an education like no other. I think that's foundational. Dr. Cruz's work. So where are you with grasping him?
I think I'm at the. I think the. I think once you understand, um, well, I'm still. I don't think you can fully grasp Dr. Cruz. I'm not quite sure you can actually fully get there. I think for me, the thing that actually that I finally started to figure out is when you connect Becker's work with Nick Lane's work. So the energy system in the body, right? So if you think of Nick Lane's 30,000 electron volts in the inner mitochondrial membrane, and then you have, the mitochondrial water, which is the dopant there, it actually helps. That's the thing that controls that current, right? And then if that runs wild, then that's when we get disease, right? That's when we get the brownout. So in my thought, like back to my original premise of like that I talked to Dr. Cruz about is, if we actually do expand adults or we try to make the airway bigger, um, and Dr. Jack in my podcast does mention the CPAP study there, and there is a CPAP study out there that does show a 10% increase in cancer um, in patients on CPAP, which actually kind of does show that there is some negative effect in some people of too much oxygen, like when you put a CPAP on an apneic patient. I'm sure there's all sorts of different ways to look at that. It's 2,300 patients. I'm sure it needs to be replicated. We need more information on this. I mean, it's it's maybe not a gold standard study, but it's enough of a question, right? So the question is too much oxygen part of the problem? So the idea being that if the mitochondrial power is reduced, then we get more ROS signal, and from that ROS we get UPEs, or biophoton release, right? Which are they're not really the correct biophotons. So those photons are released. They're not actually taken in for more energy. Got it? So now we have lower power. And what happens when Dr. Cruz will always say, and when lower powered systems, what happens to biologic systems when they get lower powered? They actually grow. So that's obesity. That's, it could, if it's in the oropharynx, we could get a larger tongue. We could get a larger nose. We could get all sorts of things. The real problem with in kids that don't have the right size jaw is, I mean, apoptosis is how our fingers are not webbed, right? When we're born, we have 5 fingers that aren't webbed. If apoptosis stops at the tongue, then the tongue is actually tethered to the floor of the mouth, and if it can't actually graze to the top to the roof of the mouth, then the upper jaw doesn't grow. And so, I would say probably 70% of the patients I examine today, even today, have tethered tongues. Their tongues are actually low, and you can actually see the reason the upper jaw didn't grow is because the tongue is not able to go to the roof of the mouth. So this is actually something that actually happens probably in utero, because apoptosis stops in utero. So this really is a call um, to mothers who are about ready to become pregnant, is to, what is their light environment like, and what is their tech usage. And these are all the studies that hopefully Alexis will do, so we can actually figure this stuff out to actually give some people some better ideas rather than just just a hope, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty interesting, right? And so then the idea is, for me, is when Cruz talks about Becker's regenerative current, which is 1 trillionth of an ampere, right? Which is a tiny little trickle. How do we control the superpower that's in the inner mitochondrial membrane to allow that little trickle to actually develop? And I think that's the challenge, right? And that's where melanin and melatonin and all those things, that's actually where the morning sunlight comes, because the morning sunlight's actually what's going to help control that current and actually build the mitochondrial water to help us regenerate.
Yeah. You talk about kids, so like my oldest, I have 4 kids. My oldest was diagnosed stage 4 cancer, and what got me down this trail was at first talking to Jack. I asked him, "What do we do? Right? What do I do for my son to keep him healthy?"
Yep. Yep.
And he said, "Get a tan on his back and keep him off screens." And I was like, "I don't know what that even means, right? Like this
Right.
sounds crazy." And so, but as we do, I've spent years going down that rabbit trail since. Um, to bring this back together, talk to Dr. Jill Khan down in Australia, and we discussed the airway quite a bit. And the tongue tie thing is fascinating to me. That is not a connection that I was aware of on the upper jaw. But he talks a lot about the cranial sacral therapy and expanding out the cranium and letting things go to where they're supposed to be. What what have you seen in regards to adjusting, and how are we able to adapt to these kiddos that are having a problem, right? Like Solander, one thing I think about was, he was a mouth breather. We've been able to correct that a lot, but I think that is extremely common. So how do we address that?
I think I think um, I think no one likes to look at the tongue. So there is, if the tongue can't go up to the roof of the mouth and actually stay up there, it makes breathing through your nose very difficult because if it's a low tongue posture, the tongue actually tends to go back into the throat. So, I mean, in my practice, I actually have a myofunctional therapist who works with me, and it is the hardest thing to actually get people to actually do because most people can go on YouTube. You can go on YouTube, you can find myofunctional therapy. There's exercises you can do. You can actually follow them online. The problem is most people, if you do them online on YouTube, most people don't do them well enough to actually get the benefit. I mean, it's almost like you need to have a therapist actually working it up with you and actually making sure that you're doing them correctly. And then once you get the tongue functioning better, it needs to be assessed whether it needs to be released. And I mean, I know Jack is not a huge fan of surgeries, but I think you do the therapy first, see how much you can actually improve it, and then decide if it needs to be released. It can be released, and if it needs to be released, you have to do therapy afterwards. It's the tongue has it's a muscle with almost eight. It has I think it's eight muscles that are in it that actually tell it what to do. Um, so I think myofunctional therapy is like, and like if you're doing cranial sacral or any type of expansion, myofunctional therapy has to be done, in my opinion, before. And I'd probably rather do it before we even did any surgery or even did any expansion, just to see if you can actually get, I think we don't have a lot of data on it. It's typically assumed that once the sutures are fused, that you're not going to get much expansion after that. I do think in kids, I think the tongue puts, was it 8? I don't, I'm not a myofunctional therapist. I let my Dr. Lee do it for me. Um, but I think it's like 8 to 10 pounds of pressure on the teeth, something like that. That's how much force the tongue can actually push the teeth almost out of the mouth if it's in the wrong place. So in from me and as a decentralized view of things, I mean, I think that's the simplest way to actually help improve function is to actually get the tongue working correctly,
I mean, it makes
which is
sense.
the hardest thing to get people to do because you have to tell somebody to actually go do it. You have to get them to like it's like going to gym it's like going to the gym with your tongue, and you have to pay a therapist to actually make sure you do it right because it's the last thing you want to do is go through all these exercises and then not do it correctly, right? So
Sure, sure.
I mean, and you can go on YouTube, and I think there will be people who can actually do it. I'm not saying they can't. I just think in general most people need to actually pay some money to have somebody help them with it. And there's myofunctional therapists all over the country that can actually do this. And they do it virtually and all sorts of things.
Well, it's definitely something I'm going to look into. I think that's fascinating. It's just an aspect I've not heard, and it makes so much sense. So
And so
much
then
sense.
let's go back to Dr. Cruz's theory about like biophotons, right? So let's think about like what happens if you get the tongue working correctly. Are we now starting to keep those biophotons in? Or are we still releasing them? So that becomes like, I mean, I don't know about you, but when I read Roland Van Wyck's book of on biophotons, I mean, my head was like it hurt for like 4 days, and I had to like just keep putting it down. I still think I still think I'm a newbie and don't really understand much of it at all.
Well, I don't know how many people actually do understand that, but it's
And I
it's
think that's the
unbelievably
problem too.
important. Yeah,
It
and
is.
that makes you sound like a wackadoodle when you're talking to other people because it sounds so far out there, but
It
that's
does. Yeah.
it's obvious, right? But
Yeah.
when you tie in together Maywin Ho's work and then Fritz Pop with Van Wyck's, it's just absolutely incredible. I think there's still parts of everybody's story that we're still missing, though, right? So like
I I agree.
even with so Cameron Borg just did an interview with Van Wyck, and it was absolutely incredible, absolutely fantastic. And so this is where cancer is really my whole world. That's what I
Hmm.
focus. And
Yep.
so when you have this disruption between chromatin and DNA and mitochondria with this harmonization of the biophotons in that cycle, everything goes out of whack. It's just crazy. And so you'd mentioned the tongue tie. That's what we call it in the South. I think you said
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah. I think the
the
correct term is ankylosing or something like that is the
okay.
actual.
We're gonna go with tongue tie. We're gonna go tongue tie.
That's good.
I have heard that correlated with methylation issues, so MTHFR, and so whether it's not, or, I don't know. But the what I find fascinating about that is that methylation being, I mean, basically it's a chromatin remodeler, right? Like this is what it does. It speeds up, it slows down, and this is all based on UPEs, on biophotons, on gene expression based off of light. And so my point there is that is a light game too, right? So like that, it to me it makes sense that maybe some of this tongue tie stuff is also a correlation with maybe a gene variation of like MTHFR and not enough
Hmm.
sun.
Yeah, I I would say 100%. I mean, um, who was it? I mean, apoptosis is directly related to UV light. So if you don't have the amount enough UV light, then the apoptosis ceases or diminishes significantly, and autophagy is red light. So I mean, I definitely think it is a relationship between the two for sure. And I think as we've moved indoors the last 50 years, I think that's why we see a lot more tongue ties.
Makes sense.
I
And then
mean, I wish we had more data on it. I wish we had more. I mean, you look it up. You look up the myofunctional therapy data, and it does cite the lack of apoptosis as one of the causes. I'm sure there's lots of other reasons that people can come up with, just like anything in biology, because biology sits on top of physics, so you can actually make all sorts of different. You can,
absolutely.
I mean, I mean, I think that's the thing that's most amazing about this is once you understand like Doug Wallace's work and you understand that the mitochondria, um, and how we truly are an N of one. And so when you really try to like, when some of my colleagues will say, well, where's the trial or where's the study? And I'm like, well, I don't know how you're going to get that. You're not going to get a study. You're not going to. There's no study that's going to prove right or wrong. And at some point, you just kind of have to like um, look at the science and look at the people who have done the work, and they'll start to like connect the dots. And I think that's actually what makes this work challenging, in my opinion, because it's not like we can say, well, this is we took 10,000 patients, and this is what happened,
Yeah.
right?
But I think that's what makes it so exciting and so much fun, right? Is piecing it together because we have so many brilliant minds that have laid
Right.
out these what I refer to as lattice work of mental models, and when you start connecting them, it's which Jack is an absolute master of doing, by the way.
Yeah, for
I don't
sure.
think anybody on that level with connecting these different ideas, and so um, let's go into a little bit of that conversation you had with him on fluoride, right? I think that's a huge topic, especially
Yeah.
with RFK Jr. and that's top of mind for a lot of people. So, how, as a traditionally trained dentist, do you view fluoride now?
Um, that's a yeah, that's a good question. I mean, obviously, if you look at it from the mitochondrial standpoint, oxygen's like the terminal um, part of electron transport chain. Fluoride sits right next to on the periodic table. Fluoride is really close to oxygen, right on the periodic table. They're both, highly, active atoms. So, yeah, fluoride can knock out oxygen on the electron transport chain and actually decrease mitochondrial function. There is that study that just came out recently that showed, fluoride in the water did seem to, you know, decrease IQ. Was it decrease IQ or something like that? I can't. It just came out recently.
Yes.
Something there was something not My personal opinion is I don't think we should be adding things to the water. I just don't think we should be adding things to the water for. I mean, it doesn't matter what it is for like a public health. We don't really. I think what it comes from is, I think it was, I don't know, 50, 60 years ago. There was like a this town in Texas that had fluorosis. So they had too much fluoride in their water, and you actually, if you have drink too much fluoride, you get fluorosis of the teeth. It gets modeling of the teeth. Well, what they noticed was there wasn't a lot of decay down there compared to other places. So this is where they decided to use the fluoride in the water because, I think this is about the only thing that came out from it. Um, you know, I I'm not a fan of it. I don't use it personally. Um, I will say this. Um, I think there are some patients, based on everything else that's going on, um, that and it's probably a net benefit for them to use in certain situations. I'm not saying that's for everybody, but I mean, if someone's going to at risk of significantly losing their teeth and they're already, a cancer patient, they're already going through whatever, um, you know, I'm not gonna, I'm not a biologic dentist who's going to say that it probably doesn't have some topical uses at some point. But I'm not a fan of drinking water in the
Yeah.
drinking water. Dr. Jack would definitely say never use it. And I'm actually okay with that too. I mean, I think at the end of the day, I mean, it does seem to kill bacteria in the mouth. It does seem to remineralize the teeth somewhat. Um, the problem is that it just helps kill the mitochondria too. So I think
Just
that's,
just that.
I mean,
So
so
what?
that's the issue.
Why do you think that we view this in a way of well, I mean, I know why we do the fluoride, but what about hydroxyapatite? Right, like what is your thoughts around that?
Um, I, I I definitely would rather use that than fluoride for sure. If you're going to use something, I mean, I think it brings us to a broader discussion about like what is tooth decay, right? I mean,
Hmm.
why are we using these things anyways? I think that becomes the larger question. And so, I mean, I don't know. I mean, Dr. Jack has actually talked about when he was in dental school. He heard a lecture from this guy named Dr. John Leonora, who was like an endocrinologist researcher. He was actually taught at the dental school I went to. It was actually one of my professors. His name is John Leonora, and so John Leonora's theory on tooth decay revolved around the parotid gland. The parotid gland is a salivary gland right up here in your cheek, and how it acts kind of like the pancreas does. And so he actually proved that that parotid gland actually fed all of your teeth. So there's inside your roots of your teeth, there's the nerve, and then there's also these little dentinal tubules that go from inside the tooth. And so there's actually a flow of fluid that goes from the bottom or the apex of the tooth and it flows out. So you have this constant flow, and it's actually a flow it's like a clockwise flow. He fed rats a high carbohydrate diet, and he actually showed that the flow would start to go in clockwise fashion, which actually would go outside in. So the current methodology or current thought of tooth decay is a bacteria carbohydrate acid model. So what happens is the bacteria sits on the teeth, it colonizes. There's a specific bacteria called strep mutans. You feed that bacteria carbohydrates. Those bacteria then eat the carbohydrates and they actually excrete an acid. And that acid actually is what etches the teeth and actually causes tooth decay. So that's our current model of how most people view tooth decay. And so the idea is we got to either disrupt the bacteria, that's hygiene, right? Toothbrushing and flossing, disrupt the bacteria so it doesn't stick there. We have to address the microbiome or try to figure out how to get rid of those bacteria. So that's why people use xylitol. Um, there's a guy on Twitter, like the Gator Dentist guy. Better Biome is his company, and he makes a hydroxyapatite and xylitol toothpaste. They're little tabs called knobs. So the xylitol actually kills the strep mutans, which actually causes tooth decay. So the idea is that we use a fake sugar to actually kill the bacteria. Well, so that's the current model is the bacteria, the acid, and the sugar. But none of that's taking into account Dr. Leonora's work because that's pretty much been pushed aside, which is the flow of the fluid through the dental tubules. And so this is actually what's interesting about Dr. Jack is that he's actually putting those pieces together of Dr. Leonard's work with the current model. And Dr. Jack will actually say that blue light actually helps take that flow of the through those tubules counterclockwise. So when you use sugar and you use blue light, this is what Dr. Jack will say, and it goes in reverse, that means the flow is going from outside the tooth into the tooth. So you're actually pulling in those acids into the tooth, right? And so if we get into red light or we don't eat a high carbohydrate diet and that flow is working outwards, you're taking all that fluid and you're actually going outside the tooth. Does that make sense? So
It
then
does.
if we get that going in the right direction, then it's a self-cleansing system. So then that probably explains why the back to the Weston Price and why he found all these people with normal teeth, normal skulls, all of their teeth, no cavities. Unger the Anubians in Egypt, where the pharaohs had tooth decay, the guys that living outside eating natural food. I mean, most people like Price will say that it's the diet. Um, you can actually make a case that it's probably the light environment more so than the diet at that point. You can make that argument. So, because it's just keeping the flow going in the right direction. So, the question is, how do we measure that flow? I don't know if we can right now. I'd love to be able to work with Alexis to try to figure that out because I think that would be a interesting, interesting idea. The other question is, do we start using red lights? Do we start using red light therapy on teeth? Do we start figuring that out? And then that becomes a question then, is the sun better than red light and things like that? Does that make sense? So I think if you think about it in those terms, then like, do we really need any of these extra agents when we can just, you know, I think I think hygiene is important. I think our modern world, our modern blue lit, non-native EMF world means that we still need to be disrupting the bacteria because I still think those are problems. I don't think we can just live like the Anubians and you know
Right.
I mean, does that make sense?
Right.
I still think you need to clean them. I just
So
don't know if you need to
how
do adding extra stuff to them if you don't have to.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, getting back to nature, get outside is really is it. But what I have, and I have some friends that are dentists, and they struggle with how the office is set up. So what do you do? What kind of tricks do you have within the office to help take care of yourself and the patient?
Yeah, I think this is the one. This is also the one thing that I've been thinking about a lot, and I don't have any great answers for. I mean, my dad worked for 50 years in a dental office, and he basically died from metastatic prostate cancer and some early onset Parkinson's, which are both mitochondrial diseases, right? So, I mean, living in Las Vegas, Nevada. My dad also had blue eyes, sun sensitive, always wore sunglasses, even though he read John Ott's book, right? Uh, so I think about these things often. I think about like what do we do? I think our offices are like you hear about like the dental suicide rate, and you think about the dental unhappiness rate, you think about the mental health issue with the dentist. um I mean, yeah, nobody likes to come see us. I totally get that. But it is, as a young dentist, I'm not young anymore, but when I was a young dentist, I mean, having somebody say, you know what, doc, I like you, but I don't like coming to the dentist. I mean, it's like it gets old after a while, right? But you kind of have to get used to it. You have to put an armor up against it, right? um So I do think a lot of the mental health issues really come down to like our environment and how we work. I mean, most dentists are up before dawn, and most people are in their office at 6 o'clock in the morning. Underneath the stresses of the light and the work, and they're working all day and don't even see the light. I think um, if you read John Ott's book, he is a fan. I mean, he does make a good case that full spectrum fluorescent bulbs seem to do better than blue light bulbs. So I think right now, I mean, we don't really have. I think the LEDs are a problem because of the flicker. Unless we had a flicker-free LED full spectrum bulb that had some red and infrared in it, that would fit into a fluorescent tube. I mean, that might be. I mean, for me right now, I make sure I see the sunrise every morning. I go home during lunch, and I try to get home for sunset. And then every weekend, I try to spend as much time as I can outside. And then about if I can during the day, I mean, I try to spend, bug outside for 5 or 10 minutes just to go reset outside in the sun. It is a problem, and I don't have a good answer for you right now. I do think in the future, soon, we will start using. Um, we are. I mean, lots of dentists are using photobiomodulation in their offices for improved wound healing. I think that's going to fully. We're going to get more research on that, and actually know that that's probably going to give us some more information, and maybe we actually start working underneath some red lights too at some time. I think that's coming. I haven't quite reached that threshold yet, but it's coming. I do use photobiomodulation in my office, and I'd actually started using it before I met Dr. Cruz, and now I'm kind of like, if I can get a patient who needs photobiomodulation, if I can get a patient to just start looking at the sunrise and not doing anything else, just basically just going for a walk in at during sunrise hours, um, most of those patients end up feeling so much better that it's actually a win. So for me, I'd rather have them just going out for sunrise than coming and paying me for a red light therapy. And that's kind of how I view it. I don't really. I think I think red light therapies are fine, but I think morning sunrise is way better.
No, I agree wholeheartedly. One thing that I've recommended and utilize are the incandescent reptile lights, so
Mm-hmm.
UVA and infrared, and also Chroma has a sky portal. I think that would be just
Yeah.
absolutely a game changer for the offices. I've got a lot of know a lot of surgeons, and
Mhm.
like their brains are falling apart, and
Yeah. No.
they're retiring out left and right, and it's obvious, following Jack and what's going on, right? But it's scary how common, and it seems to be getting younger and younger.
Yeah, I did put I have like can spotlights over my front office, and in my waiting room I still have some fluorescents up there which are full spectrum, but I did put Scott Zimmerman's near a can lights above in the areas where I could. I am considering, I almost did buy some of the sky portals to put into my operatory rooms to give some more balanced light in there too, So I mean, I think there's lots of things we can try. But I think the best thing is just go outside for, I think Dr. Jack says, if you're working indoors, for every hour, go spend 10 minutes. I mean, maybe the guys who smoked were like the smartest people out there, right? Go spend go spend 10 minutes for a smoke break, or a sun break, something like
Yeah,
that.
the
I can't get
nicotine
too
rabbit trail is hilarious and is too. Like it's like everything that you come across, we have pretty much been lied or misled on. Like
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it's true. It's like it's frustrating to think back like all the things you thought you believed, and now you're just like, okay, now we're here, right? And like this is like the new normal. I mean, I will. It was funny. Just this week I have a patient he's a dermatologist, and he's a researcher, so he does research, and he knows a lot of the big name dermatology people, and of course he's like, he looks at me and he's like, "Man, you look good." I'm like, "Thanks," and that's all I said.
just complexion is like,
Yeah,
I find that so ironic that intuitively we can look at somebody and judge health on complexion, right? We know when
right,
somebody's pale, they're sickly, right? Like that. This
right.
we know this, and then this is why we have like fake tanning, right? Like
It
this
is.
isn't
Yeah,
attractive. Like
right.
so, like we know it, but we think the sun is killing us. Like or that's what we're
Right.
told. It's just mind blowing.
It is mind blowing, and it's like it really just. One thing that's always kind of struck me was like, how come, like, if skin cancer was such a big problem, how come we haven't had it for like 500 years? And I mean, it's like you look at the record, and it wasn't like people were like having. I mean, okay, I understand that we weren't looking for it maybe in the 1850s, but I mean, I don't think you see as much of it as you do now. I mean, I don't think people were dying of. I don't know. Maybe I'm off my rocker there too. I don't know, but I mean, I just don't see it.
No, I don't think you are. But when you start looking at some of the data, like the highest rates per 100,000 are actually in the Northwest. So Washington, Oregon,
Hmm.
Idaho. That which that's not that shouldn't be accurate, right? If it was the sun.
No. And then you look at Scandinavia too. The Scandinavian studies actually show that it's up there too, right? They have high levels up there too. So I mean, I think what the Weller study actually gives me, that's the one that's like the one out of the UK where it shows that increased sun exposure led to better outcomes with melanomas. So I mean, It's
Yeah,
like it's a pretty solid, you know. So I guess to go back to your fluoride, I mean, like, I mean, I think if the sun, if you use if you get your environment right, I really don't think you need any fluoride. I don't think you need to use it. I think the fluoride, if melanin will actually help, get rid of the fluoride too. I mean, melanin's probably the number one way to get chelate your system of these things. Um, but I think ultimately, if someone's not going to do those things, you know, I if someone's not going to at least try to help themselves and they're going to lose their teeth, I mean, sometimes, I mean, maybe topical fluoride is makes make people make choices, right? I mean, people have informed consent is a thing, right? And so, people should be able to do. There are people in my practice today that you know will use fluoride till the rest for the rest of their life.
that's on them.
Yeah.
What do you think of the honestly, the lack of medical freedom that we actually have? I think so. I was actively involved with getting ivermectin over the counter in Arkansas. That was a big push. Also legalizing raw milk. So been very active politically in 2025. But I am just blown away with the illusion of freedom and how the medicine is has been corrupted. What are your thoughts around that, just in general, not necessarily just dentistry, just what we've
hmm
experienced over the last 5 years, and the ivermectin thing? That's crazy to me too. The fact that
Well, yeah, I definitely think trust is lost, right?
it's
I
gone.
think it's gone. Yeah, I think I see it for sure. The hardest thing for as a practicing dentist is to just build trust, and I mean it can go away so fast too. All it takes is one little thing, and people are gone. I don't think that's. I think it may not happen. It may not ever return in my career or your career. I don't know. I don't know when the public will ever you know
I think as
trust
soon as
them
people
again.
are honest, I think that's when you do it, right? Like I think that
I
when you
think
keep
so.
trying to hide it and be honest about what if you screwed up, you screwed up, right? Like if you believed in the mRNA injections and you now own it, right? Like if the
Yep.
pediatric vaccine schedule is not what you thought it was, own it, right? Like I think that's the big thing, is like the continue to gaslight the populace because you were wrong, you want to protect it, right? And that's why, like, I respect you, like a dentist speaking about fluoride and not a positive light, like that takes a backbone, right? Like that's I respect you for that. And I think other professions should, especially pediatricians, dermatologists, and ophthalmologists. It's insanity that they continue to defend a lot of this crap.
Yeah, there's a lot of like, I mean, I'm in a lot of like dental Facebook groups, and I'll probably get a lot of heat for this, but I mean, there's a lot of, maybe not, I don't know, depends on who watches it, right? I mean, lots of dentists, Florida took out fluoride out of the water, and every dentist is like, well, I'll just make more money, and I'm like,
No, you won't.
well, I mean, no, not necessarily. I mean, it really isn't how this works, right? This isn't really how it's not like just if fluoride was going to solve the dental problems, why didn't it?
Well, I mean,
Why
there's more
do
fluoride in pharmaceuticals than even in the topical dental
right?
things,
Then
right? Like, so like we're
exactly
getting inundated even more
we
so than
are
water in the pharmaceuticals.
e-
So like,
exactly right.
eh,
So it's
eh,
like I mean, and so if fluoride was actually the solve it that would solve it, I mean, I was told like when I was in dental school in the mid early '90s that probably in my career we would solve dental decay. I mean, spend a week in my office and I'll show you that dental disease is not gone. It's like I mean, it is a far more complex problem than just a fluoride molecule. So, I mean, if someone doesn't want to use it, don't use it. That's fine.
how do you correlate tooth decay and osteoporosis? Is there a similar mechanism possibly there? Is it completely different, or is there some common ground?
I think, I mean, teeth are not bones. I mean, they're similar, but they're not bones. They don't heal like bones do. 'Cause you know how um, Jack will say like a bone will completely like
Yeah.
regenerate. Teeth don't. I know you'll see it online. People say that, I cured all my dental disease. I'm like, okay, that's fine. I'll go ahead. It's fine. I mean, I have not seen it. Um, little tiny little areas of decay maybe can remineralize and will never get bigger. I've seen that, and I'll give people a break. But if there's a big gaping hole in the tooth, there's no cells inside the tooth. So there's not really any correlation that I would say between osteoporosis and tooth decay. I mean, I think the biggest problem with osteoporosis that we face is the drugs. So the drugs are the osteoporosis drugs, the Fosamax, the the Bonivas, the injectables. Those are actually a problem because if you it will delay wound healing. That and the osteoporosis. I mean, I took an implant training about 20 years ago, and there was a guy who's this Egyptian oral surgeon, and he worked in out of a dental school in Atlanta, and his they were talking about Fosamax and a couple of the other osteoporosis drugs, and so what those drugs do is they actually shut down. There's two. The bone actually it's always turning over. It's remodeling. You have osteoblasts and osteoclasts. So this is a very simplified version. I'm just a dentist. I'm not a bone pathophysiologist. So this is how I understand it. So the osteoclasts break down bone, osteoblasts grow bone. So if you're putting a force, like the way we move teeth is you put a force, like orthodontics, you put a force on a tooth. It actually puts a pressure on the bone. Those osteoclasts will remove the bone, and the osteoblast build bone on the backside as you're pulling on it. So it's actually a process there. Well, orthodontics, the people who are on the osteoporosis drugs do have a little bit of a harder time with orthodontics because it actually shuts off those osteoclasts. So we actually stop breaking down bone. So what that effectively does is it actually makes the bone denser, but is it making the bone better? Right? This is the thing we don't really understand or know. I mean, I think we're assuming that just denser is better, but is it? You throw a rubber bowl on the ground and it bounces up and down. You throw a porcelain china glass on the ground and it
Right.
shatters. So, um, I don't think centralized science understands how all that works, and it's probably a little bit above my pay grade to actually understand bone osteoporosis in that way.
Yeah.
In that way,
Well, I
I mean,
think
I
they
have to.
understand more than they act like. I think incentive dictates outcome.
Yeah.
John Jaquish did X3 and OsteoStrong or some of his companies, and he's laid out how pressure stimulates the regrowth, and I think it's fascinating from like the piezoelectric aspect that
Hmm.
goes into Becker's DC current, right?
Right.
And so. He also told me that if I said that to an orthopedic surgeon, they'd laugh at me. But
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
there's just a lot of disconnect because very few have even read Becker's work, which is shocking to
It
me.
is
And
shocking. Yeah. It is.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Sometimes just feeling like a country boy in Arkansas trying to figure out things just to kind of, take care of your family and your kids. It's wild, and it makes you feel like you either have some or a lot of things figured out that you are the like one of the few that know it, or you're a freaking nut job, right? Like you don't even know which side of the fence you are sometimes.
Yeah, I kind of feel like the same way as a dentist because I mean people are coming to me with a toothache or something else, and if you quote Becker's work or you quote whatever, I mean you're like a patient's gonna look at you like you have like a third eye, you're like so I'm in the same boat. I mean it's no different, and so I mean there are patients who I can try to like help guide them and get them to do some better things at home. But I mean, most of the time, I mean, most people are just, fix my tooth and get me on my way, and that's kind of how you have to treat it. There's no, I could either that or I could just not treat those people, which I mean, they still need to be treated, right?
Sure. Yeah, sure.
That's how I look at
So
it.
let's go into the you live in the middle of a desert.
Yeah,
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 let's play out that three-legged stool that Jack's always talking about.
yeah. Yeah. So, obviously, this is I was born here, so this is home. And obviously, it's when you start thinking about like, grounding, and you start thinking about Jack's, thesis of this whole thing and how electrons and electron flows. Um, I mean, I guess it would be great if we could all find that utopia place for us to live. And I do think there are some patients who do get to a mitochondrial problem that they have to leave and they have to go somewhere better. Um, but I think at a certain level, I think we have to learn how our bodies react. It comes back to the end of one. We have to learn how our bodies react to our own environment and our non-native EMF and how much melanin we can actually build. I do think melanin actually is the best Faraday cage we can actually have. Um, so, I mean, I think there can be, I think people can live healthy lives in almost any place that they on the planet. They just have to figure out how that works, right, for them. Because I think the n equals one. Um, yeah, I mean, we have Air Force Base 60 miles or 50 miles from me. Um, that's a problem. We have lots of great sun, which is good. We have over 300 days of sun, so there's no reason you can't get in the sun. Um, water is a problem. You can buy water. I mean, I think, yeah, I don't, I think every single person has an N of one and has to figure out like what makes the most sense for them. Are they ready to uproot their family for a health reason? And I think some people need to. I think other people, if you're doing better, um, what are we looking for? Like how, I mean, obviously if in your situation with your son who has cancer, that's a different situation than somebody that maybe has a little bit of insomnia. I mean, that Jack may say that's different, but I mean, I think there's levels of that, right? So, I mean, to answer your question a little bit better, the the sleep the sleep airway part of the dentistry world was interesting to me because I was a bad sleeper. So I would never had sleep apnea, but I would probably sleep. I'd go to bed, maybe sleep for 3 or 4 hours. Sometimes wake up. Sometimes go back to sleep. Other times not go back to sleep. So most people think, well, that's just a middle age. When you hit your 40s and 50s, that you just realize that your sleep goes to whatever. Um, Once I started seeing the sunrise, and once I started getting in the sun at lunchtime and cold plunging, my sleep
Right, I was
actually
about to
went
ask
to
you about.
like 6 or 7 hours. I get 6 or 7 hours a night now, routinely. Um, so I mean, I think you start to see improvements in just your daily habits. So I think wherever you live, I think ultimately it comes down to like how you're handling every day.
Yeah,
Every day.
no,
That's how I
absolutely.
look at it. I mean, I don't live on the Las Vegas Strip, right? I don't live in a casino, so I mean, I can actually control my environment a little bit. It's like I don't.
Yeah, a little bit better, huh? Well, let's go into a little bit of your cold thermogenesis protocol because uh, to me that's probably the, for lack of a better term, hack when you have poor magnetism, right? Is
Hmm.
utilizing a cold with sun. So
Yeah.
what do you do? How do you go about doing cold or working your way towards doing that?
Yeah. So I started this in the winter time. I mean, contrary to, I mean, it does get pretty cold here. So my pool, I had a pool, and obviously it's a chlorine pool because, and even if you get a salt generators turn into chlorine, so you're still, I mean, you're still gonna have chlorine's a problem. I mean, chlorine is the same as the fluorine, so it is a little bit of a problem. I started in the wintertime in my pool, so my pool was like 50 degrees, and so that's a pretty decent start. And I think Jack will say, you don't want your skin temperature below 50, and so 50-degree water is pretty good. So I actually started like with a 1 minute cold plunge, like 2 hours before bed, like in the wintertime. And I noticed that when I would get out, that I would actually sleep. If I didn't do it too close to, if you did it too close to bedtime, then you're just cold, right? And then you're just like, so if I did it, like say go to bed at 10, if I did it at 7, 7:30, 8 o'clock, I would be warmed up and I could sleep. Then the summer came and my pool got to like 80 degrees. And so that's no longer cold enough. You have to be in there forever for that to be cold enough. So then I noticed my sleep started to get the cold actually really, that's actually the thing that actually helped me. And this, I really need to figure out the biophotons and how that I have a decent understanding of how the cold affects those biophotons and actually creates those things. It's a little fuzzy still. I'm not quite up to speed on how all that works. But then end of last summer, I actually got a Morozco. So I actually have a Morozco that's actually grounded, and so now I can use I use filtered water in there. I put a water filter on my hose and try to filter out as much of this stuff as I can. It's not perfect. The ozone generator, and I actually use Tom's salts. So I use the magnesium and the zinc and the what's the other one? Potassium. Yeah, the little salt in there. So now, I mean, I started with that like at 50 degrees, and I would go. I don't know. I did Tom's protocol, like enough cold enough to gasp and long enough to shiver. And I got to a place where like the 50-degree mark was like it was like 10 or 15 minutes before I'd start to shiver. You could actually totally tell your brown fat starting to go. And so now for the last 6 or 7 months, I have it about 38, I think. And I do 4 to 10 minutes. I do it during lunch. So I do 4 to 10 minutes during lunch every day. So I do it every day.
every day.
I know other people say they should do it a couple times a week, but for me, I don't, I just do better when I do it. So
I
I
do
don't,
better when I do it too.
I
I
mean,
find it's miserable, right? Like to
yeah,
get in it. Like I've never gotten used to it. I'm never like, oh, I'm excited to do this, right? But once
yeah.
you're done, I've never regretted it
No,
after
I've
doing
never have
it.
either. Yeah. I don't know. What do you do? Like, how cold do you go?
38 to 45. It just depends because I have it outside and it shifts a little bit. Sometimes we'll use ice and get it down below 45, but and typically I do like 3 songs, like
Yeah. Right.
whatever that is.
Right.
I got to have some music or something going
Me
on
too. I do
sometimes.
too. I'll watch like a Twitter video or something like that, or put something else on just so whatever. No, I mean, for me, it's been the best thing. I think it's the best hack for people who live in lousy environments. That's how I think about it, because I can't really get up and move right now,
Well,
you know.
and that's the whole reason. I'm not moving with my kids either because got joint custody, and it's not have your kids or just do your thing.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. But I mean, yeah, I just think, yeah, I don't think we actually even untapped like all the benefits of what the cold does. I mean, I think there's way more benefits to cold than I think even from saunas. I think if you get a geothermal sauna, I think that would be, but I mean, I can't build a geothermal sauna where I live, and I'm not sure you can where you live
No,
either. It's
I'd
like,
have to get down closer to hot springs, I think, and tap in
yeah,
somewhere down there.
yeah, I think
Um,
so too. Yeah,
well, Doug, thank you for taking the time, man. There's just so much. It's awesome to see so many different specialties coming along. Like Max or Kelsey
hmm
Dexter, Alexis. Like, there's a lot of people that in this world. Cameron Borg, right? Like in
hmm
different focuses and things, and so it's super exciting that. I feel like we're headed in the right direction, and there's a lot of people that are interested in applying, and I mean, my thing is it works, and once you see it, you kind of can't unsee it. It makes too
right.
much sense.
It does. It really it's the pieces of the puzzle that is like that I've been kind I'm not I've been kind of looking for. I mean, here's another little quick. I know we're ending, but this is a quick little aside. I mean, I went to dental school with canker sores. You know those little white sores that you get in your mouth, right? Those little ulcers that are in there. I used to get them all the time. Like finals week, I'd have like 5 or 6 of them in my mouth. And this actual term is called recurrent aphthous stomatitis. So you get to dental school and you go to path class, and the pathologist just tells you, well, this is an autoimmune reaction. We don't know what causes it. And here's a steroid you give your patients for it. And I'm like, there's got to be this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Like, there's got to be a reason for like why these things come out, right? So then, the little personal story. So then I get out of dental school. I'm in practice for 10 years. And for 10 years of my practice, I went to work with a stomach ache every single day. Didn't matter what happened. I thought I was just allergic to work. right? I just figured I was just allergic to work, and after a couple of hours, it would go away. But this happened every day. Well, about 10 years into practice, I actually got diagnosed with celiac disease. So, celiac disease is a gut barrier autoimmune disease, right? So then once you start putting the pieces together, and then you realize that the mouth is part of the GI tract, right? So the GI tract is a tube with two sets of lips, right? That's pretty much, we work at one end of the GI tract and GI docs work at the other end. So then I started to think, and when I started fixing my diet and get rid of the wheat for my celiac disease, um, I realized that my canker sores went away. So then you start thinking, okay, so it's a barrier, right? So the ulcers in the mouth are still like a gut barrier. So then you get to Jack's work, and then you realize that the light, the microbiome is all mediated by light. And then you're like, holy cow. So most of the, is celiac disease a non-native EMF disease? Probably. Trying to get that into the lexicon is probably not going to happen anytime soon. Um, but I will say this, like I don't get canker sores and my gut is way better. Obviously getting out of the processed foods and the wheat and all the stuff, but it's even way better just in the sun. I mean, I think the sun is the best mediator for, I mean, if you have a stomach ache, get in the morning sun, get your belly in the sun and just let the sun do its thing. I mean, that's where I'm at right now. And I mean, I think um obviously, I mean, I probably need to tell my patients more about this, but it's a difficult discussion when they're coming into like, fix my chipped tooth, It's like,
Right. Well,
you
maybe
know,
maybe we're getting a little more awareness. I mean, Jack's
I think
been
we're getting there.
trailblazing for so long. Again, I revere him, appreciate him greatly, and so again, I think everybody needs to go check out your podcast with him. It was absolutely wonderful. Definitely, you get the opportunity to follow up with him because that didn't. I don't know why I enjoyed that so much. Honestly, when my dad's a pharmacist, and he's like, I hate being a pharmacist. You go be a dentist. I was like, okay. So I went and did an internship with a dentist when I was in college, and it I knew I needed to be doing something else outside. I
Yeah.
just didn't want to be in office. But it was
Yep.
a really good experience to see, behind the scenes and what all goes into there. But I just think that it's really fascinating when he goes on the dentist talks and ties things together, especially the fluoride, the sleep apnea, the uh, hypermethylation of the brainstem. Like when he goes into all of these different things, it's just fascinating to me. But
I mean, to get the leap to get what his ideas are, what sleep apnea is into the major lexicon is going to take a act of, that's going to be hard. I think that's going to be a
Doug,
hard.
but what this is the thing that I think maybe we're screwing up on. Like, why are
Maybe,
we trying to change the system? Why don't we build our own damn system, right? Like, what
maybe, yeah,
that's what we
maybe,
do. Our own network. Like, we have a network across the world of people that are on the same page, or at
same
least the same
wavelength. Yeah,
sector.
yeah.
And like that's the whole thing. Is like I don't know that blowing it up and rebuilding it is the solution. I think we just do our own network. There's plenty of people that want this help. To
Maybe I think that may be the only way to go. Actually, I
Yeah,
think
I don't think we're gonna beat them at their own game. I think we just don't play their game and do our own.
I think that's because I think the incentives do dictate outcomes, right? So there's a lot of money tied up in the sleep apnea world. I've never even played the game myself. I don't treat sleep apnea, but I mean, it's interesting to help diagnose it or at least see
Yeah,
what
yeah,
could going on. But I mean, there's a lot of money tied up in that
yeah. There's
and all the other things too. So
yeah, and
that's the
I don't
problem.
think there's more money than cancer, right? Like cancer's that money maker of it all, right? That's the king.
No, I mean the cancer story is like when you find out that the oncologists apparently they make a percentage of the
Get the
drug money, right?
kickbacks from
They get
chemo.
the kickbacks. Yeah, it's crazy. It's
Disgusting.
like it's makes me.
All
All right,
right,
man. I
brother.
appreciate our talk.
Thank you so much, and we'll visit soon.
Okay, sounds good. All right.